All right, so today's episode, we're going to cover what it means to be a mini millionaire. So for those of you who have kids or are planning to have kids, how can you set them up for success by following these strategic steps? What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Financial Freedom Fastlane. And remember, the quicker you get to your dream life, the longer you get to live it. And I'm your host, George Achampong. So excited to be back with you guys. As you can see, a lot's been happening. We got the new studio, a lot of great guests, a lot of new talent, a lot of great episodes, and a lot of great content. I haven't shared as many of these episodes, so I don't want to ignore that. I do believe I'll get back to some cadence and consistency on the solo episodes, but for now, I will share them as they come, and I thank you for your patience and grace as we do it. However, if you've been following me on IG, I have been pumping out the short form, right? So maybe what we can do is also get some of those short form pieces of content posted as YouTube shorts so that you guys can keep up with me here as well. So number one, setting up your kids a custodial brokerage account, right? And all this means is that it's an account that you would co-own with them. All right, you can invest on their behalf, and ultimately when they get of age, then they can get the account. They can own the account themselves. Now, I am a big fan of this. A lot of parents will want to set up bank accounts and things of that nature, but why not set up an investment account? Because one of the greatest levers to building wealth is time. It's super simple to set up. Most brokerages and institutions will allow you to do so, and you can set up a custodial account for your child. That's one of the first things and the best things that you can do for your kid, right? There's not going to be any provisions on how much you can contribute, and this can become the basis of the wealth building strategy for your future mini millionaire. All right, so now everybody might not be able to do this one off the rip. Again, I'm giving you ideas that you can leverage and take advantage of. But one thing that I would consider doing is I would consider buying a rental property for my child, right? That's going to ultimately be theirs that they own. And now I'm going to reinvest that cash flow from the rental property into the brokerage account, right? Because since it's for them and the cash flow is not for you, why not have one investment that's funding the other investment? So now you got one property that's producing cash flow, it's growing and appreciating in value, and you have another investment account that's now benefiting from those contributions of said cash flow. All right, step 3. Now, this is a very, very important step. Okay. One of the best things you can do for yourself is be an entrepreneur or have some type of entrepreneurial endeavor on the side, right? You don't have to. It's not mutually exclusive with building wealth, but if you want to take advantage of the tax code, it is a great thing to have, right? So if you have a business, guess what that means? You can put your kids on payroll. Now, of course, depending upon the nature of your business will determine when you can put them on payroll, right? Because you don't have any modeling opportunities for your kid, you probably can't put them on payroll at 1 year old or 2 years old. However, I own a e-commerce brand, and so I was able to put my son on payroll, and my wife is an influencer and got brand deals that were specifically for children, right? So she literally wouldn't have been able to get the money if he wasn't in the deal. So my son has been getting paid since he was less than 1 year old. And so since he now can get paid, that means we can put him on payroll legally, right? But as his parents, we don't need the money that he's earning, right, in order to take care of him. So what does that mean, right? We pay him up to $14,000, right, which is the max amount that you can pay without having to pay any taxes, or without them having to pay any taxes. And then that becomes a tax deduction to you. So you as the business owner gets a $14,000 tax deduction. Your child gets $14,000 of tax-free income. Now, here's where it gets spicy. Let's move on to step 4, right? So now with that $14,000 of income, since you don't need the money because it's for them, we're going to take $7,000 of the $14,000, and that happens to be the maximum allowable amount that we can contribute into a Roth IRA. A Roth IRA you can only have if you have earned income. If you put your kid on payroll, guess what? They now legally have earned income. So we're going to take the $7,000, contribute it to the Roth, and then the other $7,000, we're going to contribute it to that brokerage account that we talked about earlier. So every year you're able to contribute $14,000 to your kid's financial future and get a tax deduction for yourself in the process and give them tax-free income. Now, in step 5, right, or just the natural next step or revelation is that by doing this, right, when your child is age 25 or 30, kind of like depending upon when you start this process, they'll have over $1 million invested. And this is just in the custodial account. This isn't even counting the equity, right, of the property that you acquired if you went that route. And it isn't counting the contributions from the cash flow that property could produce. Let's say the property cash flowed another $5,000 to $10,000 a year. You can contribute that on top of the $14,000 that you're already investing. Or maybe you put some aside to the savings account, right, for maybe different expenses that you might have for the kid. But instead of spending the money in cash, what I would do is I would then add them as an authorized user on your credit card. And then any expenses that I would need to make for them, I would make them on their credit card, right? Because these are things I would already pay off anyway or need to buy for them anyway. But now I'm building their credit in the process with new transactions and new credit history that's in their name, while also them being able to piggyback my good credit history. This is how you start to set your kids up for real financial success. Another great thing you can do is you can establish a 529 plan, which is a tax advantage account that allows you to contribute funds for your child's education. Now, I used to not be the biggest fan of 529 plans because I feel like the landscape for education is ever changing, and you might not have another child that you want to roll those funds over to. You might not be planning on going back to school. You might not have any nieces and nephews, right? And so it's not as flexible in that regard. However, recently they rolled out a rule that you can convert a portion of 529 contributions into a Roth IRA. So what does that mean? If I set up a 529 and my child doesn't need it and I don't know anybody else who needs it, I can then convert that money to a Roth IRA, which then works out in their favor, right? And if you already established that Roth IRA, then you can simply convert those funds into that Roth IRA that you already set up for your child. Another thing that I would do is I would set up a permanent life insurance policy, right? But I would do one that's paid up in 10 to 20 years. Why? Because that way, right, when they become an adult, they don't have to worry about continuing to make life insurance payments. They already got their life insurance locked in at the age and health when they were youngest and healthiest. They now own that policy free and clear, and they have the death benefit, and that cash value is going to continue to grow and compound even if you don't make any more contributions. So now my future generation is protected by the death benefit, and they have the living benefit of the cash value accumulation inside the policy without them having to make another contribution. Okay, now, if your kid does go to college, right? Again, I don't really know what the educational landscape will look like 10, 15, 20 years from now, but if your kid does go to school, one thing that I would highly recommend is that they're probably gonna wanna have roommates, right? I would recommend getting your child a multifamily property, right? Or at least a house that has multiple rooms in the same location of the college. That way, now, instead of paying room and board to the college, right, that child can rent those rooms out to other students, other friends. Now, again, just because they're friends or whoever they may be, you still want to make sure that, there's paperwork signed and all that jazz. But I kind of did this, but I didn't own the property, but it still worked out in my behalf, right? So when I was in school, I stayed in this college-style apartment that had 4 rooms, and I had a credit card, right? So I just had this bright idea at however what I was, 16, 17, whatever it was. And I was like, hey, I will go and pay the rent for us. If y'all could just give me the cash, I'll take care of it. What they didn't know, I ended up telling them, they gave me the cash, I swiped my credit card, right? So I was able to build my credit substantially in college by getting the cash from them and then going to pay my credit and then immediately paying it off with the cash they gave me. I don't know why I had that bright idea. Maybe that's why I'm in the financial services industry teaching you today. But my point is, if your kid is going to be living with other kids anyway, and they need a place to stay anyway, why not get ahead of it on either a multifamily property or a property that has multiple rooms, rent those rooms out to other kids. Now those families are paying down your equity, right? And your kid has a property in the location where they're going to school, and now you're building equity for them as well. Because even when they graduate, then they can own that property and other students can move in. That's another asset that they can have. Now, again, I know you're not going to be able to do every single one of these strategies, but understanding the different options is going to be beneficial into setting your kid up for financial success. All right, the next and one of the most important things you're going to want to do is establish an estate plan, right? And this is going to be for yourself first, because you want to make sure that the money and the assets that you're passing down are going to ensure that this generational wealth is happening. Because what you don't want to do is buy all these assets, right, and set your kid up for success, but ultimately there's no provision in place to ensure that it happens. So there's a few things you can do. Number one, make sure that when you set up the estate plan, that there's certain provisions in place to say, hey, look, they can't access X amount of dollars until they have proven financial literacy, right? And whether you decide to do that while you're living or you have some type of financial education to prove their proficiency in understanding what you set up for them, make sure that they have that foundation before they can access the money. Because what you don't want them to do is just mess up the money because they didn't have the education. And don't be mistaken, just because they have proximity to you, because they live with you, because they see what's going on, that they're inherently going to understand specifically and exactly what you're doing. Make sure that you educate them in whatever measures you need to put in place to ensure that they are financially successful. You can do what I'm doing right now. You don't have to be a content creator. This video doesn't have to see the light of day. This can be in a vault somewhere and say, hey, if you're watching this video, sorry, but I've kicked the can. But the good news is I got you taken care of, right? And on these next series of videos, I'm going to educate you on some things that I think you need to know so that you can take care of your kids just like I'm taking care of you, right? And even before your kids get here, if you don't have any kids, right? Taking care of yourself. You got to understand how to manage money, right? So that your money doesn't manage you. Okay. All right. So this is another important tactical step of this estate planning process, right? When you die, right, you want to be very careful and key about how you allocate these resources. One way that you can do it, there's no right or wrong way to do it, but I recommend that, assuming that they prove their financial proficiency, that they can inherit 50% of your assets initially, right? And then the life insurance proceeds, because you're also going to have life insurance on your life. I forgot to mention that, right? They can receive, 100% of those life insurance proceeds have to be reinvested for the next generation, right? They can't get 50% of your assets until, right, they reinvest 100% of the life insurance proceeds for the next generation in a brokerage account. I don't care if they don't have kids yet, right? Invest 100%, because by that time your assets would have accumulated to enough value that 50% is going to be more than enough for them to get by. Now, when or how you decide to distribute the other 50, right, is up to you, right? But I don't recommend doing it all at one time. I recommend doing the first 50, right, and only doing that after they fully fund a brokerage account for the next generation. And you might be asking yourself, well, how am I going to guarantee that all this stuff is even happening if I'm not here? And that is the exact reason why you want to establish a trust and estate plan, because the trust, right, you can trust the trust to make sure that when you're no longer here, right, that it's going to be able to dictate and handle things from beyond the grave, right? And we're not doing this for the sake of control. We're doing this to make sure that we can preserve your family's legacy. I know if, something would have happened to my mom or my parents and I was in my early 20s, I don't know where I would be right now, right? If I got a bunch of money or something, I don't know what I would have did with the money. So we're just protecting our family members and our loved ones and saving them for themselves. And most importantly, making sure that this generational wealth that we want to build actually happens. All right. So these are a few steps that you can use to ensure that your child or the ones that you love in your life can become mini millionaires. You don't have to do every one. I do recommend that you at least establish the estate plan, and then you can cherry pick the strategies that make the most sense for you. But ultimately, these are going to be critical in building generational wealth for the next generation and beyond. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode. Can't wait to see you on the next one. And remember, freedom is for sale if you're willing to pay the price.